Welcome, welcome. This is step 9 of our Easier Ways presentation that we have been presenting for the last couple of weeks now. So welcome back, Randy. I wanted to just really appreciate how these conversations. I've been feeling a little insecure, over the last couple of weeks, just from the informality of this. But I'm realizing that what's really powerful about this work that we're doing is that we're role modeling that, you don't have to have fancy equipment or fancy editing or anything like that. And as we're sharing this presentation with others, I'm enjoying the simplicity of just being able to get on my phone and have this conversation and share it for whoever finds value out of it. So that being said, I will also remind the viewer we are now the Living Library Time Bank, formerly the Karmic Margin Call Time Bank, but now it is the Living Library Time Bank. And any time that you spend watching this presentation, any of the presentations, reading Randy's book, reading any of the other books that you can find in the Living Library, is all creditable hours in the time bank. So please, get in touch with me if you would like to learn more on how you can do that, how you can do that on your own, and how you can help others be able to log that time as well. So we'll be talking a little bit today about how doing that really helps everybody, really helps the ecosystem that we are starting to form here and starting to role model. So Randy, anything you want to say before we begin? And we're going to be going into step 9 today. But how are you arriving, and what are you bringing today?
Uh, Peace. I'm at ease. Some gratitude thrown in the mix. I guess all in all, I'm doing well. So I'm looking forward to our time together.
Yeah, I am too. I am too. Well, very good. So we're going to go into step 9. And if you want, Randy, I'll read the Under Earners Anonymous step 9 first, and then we'll go into your version, the easier ways version of step 9, and talk a little bit about talk a little bit about how you came up with your interpretation of it, and talk a little bit about both of our experiences with this step.
Uh,
So step 9, and I'm reading from the Underearners Anonymous site here, is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So this is about making direct amends, according to this site. Now I'll send it over to you, Randy, and ask you to recite step 9 from the easier ways.
so the way I've worded it is having become aware of our reactions, we may direct amends whenever possible, except when doing so would injure them or others. So yeah, this is pretty much where the rubber meets the road. If we talked about earlier in such, part of what's being discovered is our insecurities, our fears, the challenges that all humans encounter, um, and the unintended consequences that do it. It's peeling back the layers of the onion, and as we do these amends, these conversations, and these intentions to right our wrongs, there's something that occurs that's beyond my vocabulary. The best I can come up with, there's a strengthening of just trust that everything will be okay. There's an improved self-esteem going about that, at least speaking for myself, because I was doing hard stuff. And even though things didn't always come out, wonderful as the amends, I was doing stuff that I know I needed to do but I'd been avoiding. Um, but overall, again, even in these relationships that had been, I don't know, far from perfect, um, the relationships that I had currently and I have currently now, there's in general a positive shift. One, I don't want to have to go around and make amends anymore. Um, but yeah, there's just kind of a trust, unconditional dignity that I treat people with. There seems to be some level of reciprocation of that. but yeah, there's a satisfaction that happens when we do this. And again, it's really hard to put into words. We brought this up in the last episode.
And yeah, for me, as I've been, doing this kind of work on, on my own as well over the last week, part of making amends, but the first thing that came up for me was, making amends with my kids, because with the stress of just, being a stay-at-home dad, trying to launch this initiative that, is still going over people's heads a little bit. And, I'll talk a little bit about why I think that is here in a moment. But I've sat down and I've had the conversation with my kids about how I don't mean to react and I don't mean to get upset. It's that I'm under a lot of stress right now, family stress, work-related stress. So doing this volunteer work has created quite a bit of stress, and being able to identify that and identifying why it's becoming stressful has helped me to talk to my kids and start to create pathways towards just amends with them. Before we got on this conversation, I've been playing chess with my son throughout the week. So just kind of having that father-son time, and I'm learning a lot about kind of like the decisions I make and seeing 3 or 4 steps ahead by playing chess with my son. So that's been pretty cool. And just appreciating my daughter's gifts and her good her goodwill as well. I was watching her sing at church earlier today, and just being present at that church and being present in the environment with my family and with family friends, because as I was telling Randy before, this church was where I was raised and I grew up in. It just kind of felt like I was, making peace with my own reactions, and that's why I appreciate, your wording of the easier way, step 9, is being aware of our reactions, and yeah. So in our last call, I became more and more aware of the people I need to make amends most with is my immediate family, my son and my daughter, who are 8 and 4 years old respectively, and also just making life as easy as I can for my wife, because at the moment, yes, I am the stay-at-home dad, and I'm doing probably 50 hours if not more a week of volunteer work, trying to help people understand what is it exactly that I'm doing with this time bank, with the Living Library Time Bank. And doggone it, if we didn't miss our anniversary, Randy. My wife and I had an anniversary the other week that we both forgot, because we have so much on us. And just she and I being able to admit that to each other was kind of like feeling like we were making amends, for each other as well too. Just that there's just so much that's weighing down on us, and so much in the environment that's causing us to go in so many different directions. But just to have that conversation, with my wife, and it wasn't even a conversation where we were sorry. I mean, my mother and my father, who really need our help at the moment, they were sorry, more sorry that we forgot than we were. So it was kind of interesting how we just said, yeah, you know what, we both forgot, and it was a nice moment where, even though it wasn't like an intense making an amends moment, it was just like, wow, yeah, we're really caught up in daily life, but we still love each other, and we still we're still our marriage is still going strong. So it was something that was really neat to kind of realize as I was making amends with my kids, and making amends with honestly with myself, because of the work I am doing and the stress level involved with it. It really felt like a big weight getting lifted off my shoulders, being able to bring lightness back into it. And my wife and I are still planning on celebrating our anniversary at some point in the near future. But yeah, that was kind of like the result of being in the mindset of first making amends with my kids, and it's just like a big boulder being lifted off my shoulders. So that was my experience this week with step 9.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, so what you're describing is not exactly what a living amends is. So a lot of people that will be going through this process um, really can never make amends for what they've done. When you
Mm,
mentioned, the family and um, basically torn apart relationships and such. And because this comes from Alcoholics Anonymous's big book, if those that are listening to this are not directly involved with that type of family situation, I don't think it's too hard to envision that there's been years of people misrepresenting themselves, outright lying and stuff.
mhm,
So it's really hard for the person who's been lied to go, yeah, I trust you again. When you say you're going to do this or that, I know you will because there was so many times they abused that. Um, so all you can do is just be true to yourself, be true to your word, the relationship. Do the best you can. Doesn't mean you all of a sudden turn into a perfect person and never goof up, but you're doing the best you can never to be that person that strained the relationship in the past. Um, and what you were saying is basically, hey, look, life is kind of bonkers right now. There's a lot going on. And due to that, there's things that are, again, less than perfect happening. And you're doing your best to, not let that continue on and just being present and honest with each other and such. It does make a difference. It really truly does. So, for those that are listening to this, yeah, it does not always mean it's like, okay, here's a situation where I reacted instead of responded. There was unintended consequences. Thing got really, really messy. It's really complicated right now. I don't know necessarily what I can do, but I want to make things right. And then, of course, with things, because the amends is not just an apology. It's not just I'm sorry. It's what can I do to make it right. Now, this is the
mm,
other thing why it's important to have a trusted friend involved with this, because there are some people that will take advantage of a person's vulnerability.
yes.
Here we are in Underearners Anonymous and talking about financial things. I mentioned in the last episode, how I had, basically stolen money. I borrowed money and I hadn't repaid it back. And I'm going back to people and saying, I've blown it and I don't know what I can do other than just say, hey, I got to pay you back, perhaps even with interest. What do you think is fair? And that was basically my, well, my statement. What did you want me to do for you? As opposed to it's my, oh yeah, here's the money back. Aren't we good? Kind of stuff. It's like, so there would be, again, this, as we've talked about in previous episode, we're talking about having a horizontal relationship. I'm not coming in
Yes.
and like, hey, look, aren't I a good person now? Nor am I coming in and I'm groveling and I'm the worst of the worst kind of stuff. It's like, okay, what do you think is appropriate? And fortunately, I didn't experience, but I do know some people that I've worked with going through this. There's those that you're making amends to, and it's just like, you know what? Compound interest and all this kind of stuff. You owe me a lot more money than
Mm,
what was borrowed or what was
mm,
and such. There's a couple cases and stuff. Previous employers, yeah, I stole from the till. And to the best of my knowledge, I took about this much money, and you know, what what seems fair to you? And the person's just going, you owe me a lot more money than that because of compound interest.
mm,
And in that case, again, it's unique to each individual, but that's where you can say something of his okay, thank you for letting me know. I'm not disagreeing with it, but I think I need some time to think about this,
mhm,
and such. I don't know if that's really in the best interest for myself and my family. It's kind of the whole "can I get back to you" kind of thing. Whatever words you use are your own. My point is don't you go through this amends process and become a doormat and let people take advantage of you. Because again, what's ultimately happening here, as I mentioned, is self-esteem and such. And if
Mhm.
you're letting people treat you poorly, there's very little self-respect. There's very little self-esteem if you allow that to occur. So you're not placing yourself in a position to be taken advantage of. And
Right.
really, this is back to the complicated kind of thing. Yeah, you need to do what's right. And what's right is not to make a bigger problem. I hope that makes sense. I know I was kind of rambling there. Did
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, it made sense. And what that brings up for me as well too. I mean, for those who who don't know, one of the themes of my ministry is the forgiveness of all debt, both spiritual and financial. And like in the case where somebody is saying, you owe me a lot more, with compounded interest, there's that there kind of there's that extractive quality where people guilt you and they leverage fear and guilt, to be able to take advantage of you. And I was in a conversation with one of my colleagues earlier this week as well, and I was trying to again start to explain the mechanics, the money mechanics behind what I do with with the time bank and with the former karmic margin call project. And there was a lot of fear associated with that because what it represents is kind of like the commons, the rest of us, charging back the compounded interest on the system and the system that executes debt or that visits debt upon us. And I realized that there's a lot of fear associated with that, and that's why I start with trauma now, really starting to get underneath the surface of the trauma because when you look very closely at this, and I'm not going to make a blanket statement, I'm going to say there's a strong case to be made that our financial system, that we have to participate in at the moment, is built on debt, and some would say built on fraud. So it's the kind of thing where when you start to build new systems that kind of challenge that kind of treat people with dignity and kind of reassigns the value of the individual, there is a fear that we're going to get pushback from the system, uh, with legal gatekeepers coming in and telling us you can't do that. You can't do that kind of system. You can't create a time bank where everybody's time is worth the same. And there's a lot of fear around that because the gatekeepers themselves, are under a lot of pressure from someone higher up in the system as well. So that's why just having this conversation, opening it up, it might start the conversation going from somebody who is a gatekeeper to start to go into step 10, which is taking more of a personal inventory and continue to take a personal inventory. But it kind of gets you to take a look at yourself, that if you are in a position where you have privilege or where you have a certain amount of power, are, and, this is up to the individual really taking a look at themselves. Are they coming from a place of fear and of guilt, when they bring the hammer down and try to take advantage of people who are being vulnerable, and who are trying to do the right thing. So yeah, so I think I thought that was a kind of an important an important piece to add in here because that's just what's very alive in my work at the moment. And I am in conversations with people who are connected to that high end fiduciary, world, where there are a lot of legal entanglements and there are a lot of gatekeepers, who are telling people who are just trying to do the right thing that you can't do that. And they try to find a way where they try to make you feel guilty for doing that, and because they have a lot of legal knowledge, they try to put you in your place and try to make you feel like you don't have value or you don't know what you're talking about. So this could be the opening of a conversation where, we might be able to have discussions, have collaborations between the socioeconomic classes as well, where those who have benefited from taking advantage of the vulnerability and taking advantage of the trust, maybe the door might start to open to say, "Ooh, okay, I'm starting to see how I've benefited from this system, and I've benefited from extracting compounded interest, or I might have benefited from usury." And that's where it's very difficult to have that conversation in a space that's not safe. And that's why, really developing the friendship and developing the trust really, really helps to have that conversation. So anyway, yeah, that's what's alive for me, Randy. Thank you for holding space for me to articulate that, because I think that's really where the rubber hits the road with a lot of this work that I think that we're all trying to do, so that life can be more than just survival. It can be more than just trying to make ends meet. And yeah, yeah, I'm gonna pause there because I really said a lot, and I offered up a lot, and because the intention is to really help, to really make the difference where life can be, so much more enjoyable when the stress of debt is not hanging over our heads.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you are getting into, I think, is a much bigger collective consciousness situation
Hmm.
where, in all frankness, right now, for anybody listening to us and stuff, I'd rather that it be considered on a much more personal, individual basis of making uh, the amends and doing what's right. Now, in my book, I also can talk about not just making amends with people that I have done wrong, but also reviewing the relationships where people had done us wrong as well, too, because there's emotional charges involved with that. And certainly you can't go and demand an apology. You can't demand amends from someone. But it does allow us to sit with that. You can feel the emotions that are involved the best we can. Um, as we've talked about in other episodes and such, what we are doing is we're changing our state of being, our inner state, going from one of being burnout and regret and resentment, very likely shame somewhere in the mix there, and such to be in a state of relative peace and equanimity is, as I think is a really good word here. We can be calm as we move forward in um, current and future relationships, where again we can, lack of a better word, have boundary set and respect other people's boundaries. Really is what's, at least has been gained in my experience here. Um, I like to frame it as this whole process is what we're doing is having a fresh start in life. Um, Now, again, that can't happen without taking accountability for the quality of our life. And certainly this stuff, even though it's in the past and past can't be changed, to get to a point where the past is no longer eating us up is, again, is
Yeah.
all this comes to a point is you use the word forgiveness. Whether people forgive us or not, we're going through a process where we can forgive ourselves for not knowing then what we know now. I know one man who's really kind of adamant about it, and he's like, I don't want to forget the past. If I forget what I did in the past and stuff, I'll never have learned the lesson and such. And he really sees value in carrying around this millstone around his neck and such. And frankly, I had to default, even though I disagree with it. This is his life and this is the way he wants to approach it. having this new fresh start in life, and the relationship he has with his family is improved. His grandkids have never seen him drunk and such. All in all, his life is much better than it was before. So I share
Mhm.
this with the listener and stuff. However you approach this is is ultimately yours. Okay,
Yes.
what a
Mhm.
book says, what two guys on a Zoom recording say, and such. Um, Ultimately we get to say it's like, no, this is who I'm going to make amends with, this is who I won't make amends with. Hopefully, again, we will say I'm not ready yet, as opposed to I'll
Mhm.
never make amends with these people kind of stuff. But all of this is a means to coming to a point where we can forgive ourselves and be okay in the now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents ending here and stuff that, um, and of course, if there's any questions, any comments, any concerns involved, I'm available to reach out with. People can get a hold of me through either Facebook or through my website and such. Um, so
Yeah. Yeah, two things come up for me around that. The first, Randy, is yeah, regarding the past as well. I know that in my experience, some people need to understand the past to make sense of it in order to move forward. It's kind of like learning history. Those who are not aware of history are doomed to repeat it. So I can see it from both perspectives on that. As long as we don't get stuck and mired, in it, then it's the kind of the thing where it's like whenever there's two people or more, who are talking about this, I think there's strength in at first getting consent to look at the past, because I know that's been a point of contention, for a lot of people in my world and in my communities as well too. Is like, do we have to look at the past? Can't we just move on? Well, some people need to look at it so they can make sense of it. So I think there's that, and again, I think having the communication skills and setting boundaries around that is very helpful. And the second thing that you had that is alive for me at the moment as well is in your version in the easier ways. It's not only about taking accountability for those you might have harmed, but it's also maybe approaching those who you feel have harmed you. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that process for you came to be, where you added that in that wording about having it being reciprocal, having it being that horizontal relationship, as far as the perception of having someone else may have harmed us. Is there anything you would like to add or to speak to as to your addition of that into step 9?
well, and so I thought it said, but I want to make clear it's not necessarily addressing that person who's caused harm towards us.
Right.
It's sitting with the memory and the thought that, again, as I speak about borrowing money and with no intention of ever paying it back. Well, if just for the to make the point, if someone has we gave some money to someone who, for whatever reason, came to us, with hey, I'm in a bit of a jam. I need money, or I'm going to be out on the street. Can you help me pay my rent? And because you care about them and you love them, and you just, out of the kindness of your heart, you gave them some money. And then they've never paid you back. They act like, I don't know. Again, there's a strained relationship involved here. Well, you don't necessarily need to confront them. Basically, it's again, it's perhaps it's a situation that you just conclude, I'm never getting my money back and stuff. I just accept that and such. And again, as I said before, there's people that are like going, we'll never be friends again. You know, don't just because I've forgiven you, just do not confuse that with us that we're friends again. So
Mhm.
again, yourself, you're that individual who's saying, no, I will never ever be friends with John Doe. There's an emotional charge with that memory. So again, there's
Mm.
kind of basic human nature all thoughts carry some level of emotional charge. And what I mean by that is if they're in this context and stuff, all memories, the more important that occurrence is, the more emotional content, whether it's negative energy, things like anger and resentment, or positive energy, it's like, oh, what a wonderful event was here. The stronger, the more important that memory is, the more emotions are tied to it. Test me out if you don't believe me, and stuff as you recall. So these times that there are very strong emotional charges with them, and in this context and stuff of people that have done you wrong, doing your best to sit with that in as neutral of a position as all, with the purpose to dissipate that emotional energy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and what we're doing is not saying it didn't hurt you, it didn't harm you, but also the fact of what's done. Again, that I've said it several times, what's done is done. The past is the past. We can't change anything about it. If it's affecting how we live today, there is reason to try to, I don't know, again, do whatever's, I use the word forgiveness. A lot of people have said, oh, forgiveness is for yourself. And again, that's to your, again, the context and how you frame this up. That's your business. But that's again kind of is like, so I can sit with this and just go, yeah, um, I'll never forget it, but I'm never going to let it affect me the way it has in the past. My serenity is worth way more than trying to right this wrong with this person. So, again, the intention through all this process is forgiveness, self-forgiveness, forgiveness of others. Hopefully, people will forgive us, but frankly, we have no control over that, no say. People are going to see us how they're going to see us. Frankly, that's not our task, is to convince them to forgive us. Our task is to do the best we can, as mentioned earlier, of a living amends. Okay. I can see now. Okay. I know better and I'm going to do better. As such, that's a living amends. So, yeah, again, it's processing that emotional energy, and frankly, stuff will come back that, at least speaking for myself, things that I thought I had cleared the charge, and then sometime in the future, all of a sudden, whatever reminds me and stuff, it's like, oh, I guess there's some more work needed on that one. But when the response is that, when it's again, it's almost impersonal, of like, oh, fascinating. Wow. Okay, that needs some attention. Not right now, but again, I can see it's still with me. And it's a lot less personal. I know there has been some fruit for my effort, if that makes sense. It's no longer, the past is no longer haunting me in the way it did. Again, the regrets, the resentments, and so much are no longer just making me miserable. Because again, we can't have no control over that relationship that the past is done. So that's what I wanted people to consider with how I've framed it up. Because we're going to get into this next one here of being a little more self-aware,
Mhm.
which will be fun getting into and stuff. But when you can kind of see, oh, wow, I really went over the top on that one, and something else is going on here because, yeah, my response was not appropriate if for what I can see what was involved. That person just maybe, I don't know, asked me a question and I blew up at him. Um, kind of stuff. So we're going to have fun in the next episode, and this can pertain to a daily inventory, basically just being present and knowing where our state of being is. So yeah, I hope this
Very
helps
good.
set that up for people to consider what we're going to present next.
Yeah, very good. And with that, and we'll wrap up this segment as well too. I will just ask the viewer and ask our companion on this journey with us, is to just kind of list out, anybody that you might want to make amends with, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next section.